Hi guys, so I apologize in advance if I sound a bit different and if I look a bit different. I just woke up from a 3 hours nap, so that's probably why I'm kind of like off a little bit. So today I am gonna film my recent reads. I'm a bit late for that one. The first book I'm gonna talk about is not here. Why isn't it here? Wait. Okay, got it. Alright, so the first book I'm going to talk about is the book we read in my book club in February. So if you don't know, I have a book club in which I chose, based very frequently on some of your suggestions, every month 2 books usually, and you can pick either of those books and read them with me, and then I review them a bit more privately on Goodreads and also on those videos. A good way to read if you're not reading very often, and it's also a very good way to read diversely because I always pick books which are very diverse. I would really love to see you on there. So yeah, anyway, the book that we're gonna talk about today is called Hijam. Sorry for the pronunciation. It's called An Iraqi Rhapsody and it's written by Sinan Antoon. I love this book, and it was a bit of a shame because actually lots of people could not find it outside of like Western Europe and the States. I'm not sure why, but it was a big shame because it's honestly one of the books I've enjoyed the most reading in my book club. It was very beautifully written, yet very easy and fluid to read. Like, it was kind of like the pace and the style and the quality of the writing were very good and of high quality, but it didn't impact the reading nor the understanding of the novel in the way that it does in some classics, for example, where you find it a bit hard and a bit tedious to read, or you have long descriptions or long narrative extracts. This one was very different. It was really easy to read, yet it didn't feel too easy, if you know what I mean. I like the very nostalgic touch. I like the very sensual touch. I like the choice of just you know, telling little bits and pieces of stories, and I really enjoyed the first person narrator, which I find to work really well in some cases, and that was definitely the case for that one. Okay, next book I read, which was definitely not for my book club and definitely not the same as the first one, Surréalisme et Sexualité by Xavier Gauthier. This one I obviously read for my master degree and my dissertation, and as you can tell, it's an old book that's like falling apart, like literally falling apart. It's obviously not for everyone, but I do enjoy reading literary analysis works and literary history works and that kind of books in general, and this one was very interesting because obviously was combining 2 of my favorite fields of interest, sexuality and surrealism. I would say that sometimes I did disagree with Xavier Gauthier because she went a bit too far in my opinion, but it was a very precious source of information, of knowledge, and it really helped me for my dissertation. Then I read Fragment d'une autobiographie, Chronique d'un exil en France by Mahmoud Behrem Tounsi, who is an Egyptian writer who has some is from Egypt and Tunisia as well, and has some Turkish roots. He was banned from Egypt in the early 20th century, and that's basically the story of that, the story of him being banned and why, and his reaction to it, and his exile in France and how it felt and how his life was back then. I just really enjoy this because it's kind of interesting to see this as someone who works now and is in contact with a lot of Egyptian migrants nowadays, and it's also very interesting from an historical point of view. Like, the older I get, the more I realize, fuck, I don't know about the history of this country, I don't know about the history of that country. I should. So yeah, I feel like I know a little bit about Egypt, but it's always nice to have more and more sources and more ways to learn about the history, and also angles and perspectives and point of view. So yeah, it was a lovely and short read, which I don't think has been translated into English. Then I read this one, which is in English. It's called Angry Voices, an anthology of the offbeat new Egyptian poets. Egypt once again. It was a bit unusual for me because it's poetry. I don't usually read poetry. It's contemporary poetry. I don't usually read contemporary poetry, but I thought it was very unique and worth giving it a try. The reason why I picked this one up is because I have a class in a university this semester. It's called The Politics of Poetry, and it deals with the politics of poetry, but in very diverse ways, like why is it good, why isn't it good, why do people choose to do politics in that way, what does it mean to be an activist in poetry, is it really the aim of poetry, and can you do it only in a style related way, blah 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 blah. And this one deals with that. It's like you know how some languages are a lot more, I would say, stiff or like rigid and strict than others. For example, in France, I think like we did revolutionize the language at different times and a little bit earlier than some countries, and it's not that much of a big deal if we use like very slangish or like informal speech in poetry, whereas some countries like Japan, for example, or Egypt, for example, as well, when in the 20th or like 19th century they decided to try to, you know, modernize literature and write differently with a different sort of Japanese and a different sort of Arabic. It's a bit of a controversy, and that's kind of like what this book is about a little bit. It presents different new authors who write very differently, not necessarily angry in the sense of what they talk about, but more so like angry because they want to free themselves from old and traditional ways of writing. Then I read this little book which I bought for only €1, and it's called Les Femmes. It's in French, and it's basically just a collection of prejudices that we have about women, for example, and that women and work is not natural, or that I don't know, women don't like sex, or that women like to stay at home, or that those jobs are only good for women, ink is a protection for women, blah 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 blah. And the author, Yannick Ripa, who is a teacher, I think, she deconstructs those stereotypes and those prejudices to replace them with facts and data and historical facts and analysis and studies and stuff, and it's very very eye-opening. I did learn quite a few things, especially from like a historical point of view perspective, because I suck at history. I would highly suggest people that can get it to get it, because it's a nice book to read if you want to read about feminism and women condition and that sort of things. Then I read Fat is a Feminist Issue by Susie Orbach, I don't know how to say this. Because Lina talked about it several times, I think, on her channel, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like it that much. I was like, I mean, there are some very valid and interesting points, and that definitely is not a book I regret reading, but I felt like it could be half as big, honestly. Nonetheless, an interesting read. Would I recommend it? Kind of. Would I think it's like an essential read? Not really. But that's me. And the last book, which is gonna be perhaps a surprise, it's poetry again. I read Even This Page is White by Vivek Shraya. What could I say? I picked this one up because I saw it on one or two channels on YouTube, and the way it was described was as important, crucial, necessary, mind-blowing. I think when people say that one book is important, even if I don't necessarily enjoy it, like for example the style or the matter or the subject, I kind of want to read it because I feel like important, you know, you should read it, you should acknowledge it, you should support it, and you should inform yourself and educate yourself. And I think this one is definitely important. You don't necessarily learn things as like, you know, information, facts, data, whatever, but you do feel like you're being taught things, which, you know, is more important sometimes. It talks about race, it talks about colors, it talks about privilege, it talks about being an ally, it talks what it means to be an ally, it talks about being white, about queerness, about different kinds of racism, it talks about attraction, it talks about feeling beautiful, it talks about knowing yourself, identity, a lot of things. It's beautifully written, it's very very innovative, even though it's definitely not the things I like to read usually, and it's not my cup of tea, you would say. But yeah, it was a success. It's in English, most people do read English on here. It's not very expensive, it's affordable, I would say, kind of, and you can get it anywhere, so you don't really have any excuses. So get it, read it, be mind blown. Is that how you say it? That's it for this month recent reads. Was quite a bit of books, very diverse once again. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go edit this video, and I shall see you later, guys. Let me know what you've been reading this month. Let me know if you have any recommendations, and feel free to join the book club if you want. Bye!